You've heard of blue-collar jobs, white-collar jobs. Have you heard of green-collar jobs? It's a term that's fairly recent. I thought I was going to embarrass myself by saying, I've never heard of this and it's been around for 10 years. No, but it is fairly recent. My next guest is going to talk about just that. I am joined by Colin Guldimann. He's an economist with RBC Economics and Thought Leadership. Welcome to the show, Colin. And let's first of all talk about, because there's some results of a latest, report on these green-collar jobs. What are some of the results of that report?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for having me on the show today. We have spent some time looking at exactly how the net zero transition, so being more environmentally climate friendly, is going to impact the Canadian labor market. And what we've really found is that this is a big shift, generational challenge for Canadian workers to adapt to the requirements of these new green-collar jobs. 15% of the labor force, or 3.1 million Canadian workers, work in jobs that we think are going to see some of these skills shifts, whether that be brand new skills they need to learn or ways they need to adapt their skill set to really be more environmentally friendly in their jobs. And that's, 3.1 million existing workers, and up to 400,000 of these new jobs we're creating in the next decade will be these affected positions.
Colin, you mentioned that term net zero. What exactly do you mean by that?
So net zero is sort of an end state for the economy for Canada, where we take as many tons of CO2, carbon dioxide, out of the atmosphere as we put in any given year. So, when you burn a fossil fuel or you make cement, these things produce these emissions.
Right.
Net zero means we're taking all those out, at the rate we're putting them in.
I think there's some obvious ones out there, obviously, Colin, when it comes to different sectors that will be affected. What are some of the sectors that will be affected, maybe outside of what comes to mind, first of all, is oil and gas?
Sure. So, of course, oil and gas workers, as we transition away from fossil fuels over the next 30 years, there's going to be some disruptions in that sector. I think a flip side of that, people often think about solar panel installers or the people who service wind turbines. These are important green jobs that are, part of the new green energy system. But a lot of Canadian jobs, you don't get to 3.1 million workers just with oil and gas and solar panels. So it's engineers, it's architects, economists like myself learning more about emissions, even broadcasters like you needing to be climate literate. So a lot of these changes, happening as we progress towards this goal. And an interesting one for me, I think, to pan in on for a moment is electric vehicles.
Right.
So one might think, we have lots of car mechanics, but fuel-based, gasoline-powered cars work really differently than electric vehicles. So mechanics are going to have to change how they service these vehicles. But, there's more than that. Even just in this value chain, we looked, from the steel we produce, which will be produced completely differently to be, lower emissions,
right,
through to how we build the cars. So welders, when they're building, components for vehicles, have largely been welding steel. Well, for an EV, we need lighter weight materials. So we're welding together steel and aluminum. And that's complicated and requires a brand new skill set for these welders. So there's lots of changes happening throughout the economy, from very technical skill-based things like changing welding skills to softer skills like planning for transition and talking to clients about new solutions your company might have, the heat pump you might be trying to sell instead of a gas furnace.
Yeah, and we've heard that, we've heard about this coming, I think, from different levels of government, in particular the federal government here in Canada. So what needs to happen from a government perspective moving forward with these, transitioning to these green-collar jobs?
Well, we're working towards really the goal of cutting emissions, and that's where policy has focused thus far, trying to get fewer carbon emissions produced. But that's a financial capital problem, getting the right investments, changing over the steel mill production processes. But a lot of the training for these green skills is happening on the job. Employers are taking students out of universities or people out of colleges that know the trades and really giving them brand new skills in order to do these new green jobs. And so a large part of what we think the solution to this challenge is in retraining all these workers is making sure that educational institutions and employers are working together to upskill their staff. And that's, something we do quite well here in Canada, this work integrated learning, but it's something we'll need to accelerate and recognize that technology is changing every single day. for these, sort of new green workers, and accounting for that is going to be both a public policy challenge, funding more of this work integrated learning, but also getting employers into this and encouraging them to do it on their end.
I've got just about 20 seconds left, Colin, and just wanted to ask you, what about resources? Where can we find out more information? Where's a great place to go?
So a great place to start is on rbc.com/economics. My Twitter as well, @CGuldimann. We talk a lot about these sorts of things there. So lots of resources out there. Have a look.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us, Colin. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. Hey, don't go anywhere because spring, it is just around the corner. And how do you get your vehicle prepared for that? We'll talk about that right after this.